Hey guys, welcome back. So today I wanted to talk about books to read if you are trying to learn or practice a second or third or fourth language. Obviously, English is my first language, but I also speak Spanish. I learned it a while ago, though I haven't been using it as much as I would like to. And so recently, when I was trying to decide what book I wanted to read next, I passed by a couple of my Spanish books on my bookshelf, and it reminded me that I should probably pick one up soon because it has been a while. And if you are learning a second language, then you know how important it is to practice as much as possible. So I figured I would share with you guys the 5 type of books that you can read if you are learning a second language or if you are trying to keep in practice of your other language. So the first type of book that I feel you should read if you are learning a second language or trying to practice is a short book. So my example is The Little Prince, or El Principito in Espanol, and obviously you can see how short it is. I was given this a while ago, oh my goodness, years and years ago when I was first learning, and I was told over and over again by multiple people that it's the perfect book if you are trying to learn Spanish or if you have just learned Spanish and you're trying to dive into something that is outside of your usual textbook book. And I'd have to agree. Obviously, because it's super short, I feel it does a really good job of making you feel accomplished when you finish it. And also the language in it is not very difficult. So if you're at a level in your language, an A or B level in your language, then you should be able to finish this. Though I will say, just as a side note for any of these books, my biggest tip when you are reading books in a different language is not to get hung up on looking up every single word if you don't know it, but more so trying to get the context of it using the words around the word that you don't know to help you figure it out. This is useful for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't hold you up when you're trying to get into the story. And 2, it helps you develop those contextual clues skills. So once you do figure out what the word means, it has a better chance of staying in your memory because of the way that you learned it, rather than going off to the dictionary and looking it up and just forgetting basically as soon as you're done with that sentence. Okay, so the second type of book that I recommend reading is a book that you have already read before that has been translated into your target language. So this for me is Harry Potter. I've got the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone translated into Spanish, and this is really good because obviously I am super well versed in Harry Potter. Even though it is longer than The Little Prince, it's not as daunting because I already know the story. So even though the language is more advanced and there's most likely a lot more words that I don't recognize, because I already know the story, I can deduce what it means, and thus I don't have to run to the dictionary all the time to figure it out. And it's a really fun way for me to learn different words because, for example, let's say I didn't know the word wizard outside of context. Obviously, reading this book, when I know they're talking about Harry Potter and you're a wizard, Harry, I'm gonna know what the word means when I come across it in Spanish. So you don't have to use Harry Potter, obviously, as your example, but whatever book that you're already familiar with, for me, I wanted to choose a book that I had read more than once, but really just any book that you're familiar with, try and see if they have a translated version. That way you can use that as kind of your intermediate book for when you're trying to practice your language skills. So the third type of book that I want to recommend are anthologies or short stories. I have Agatha Christie's Poirot Investigates just because I like Agatha Christie and I collect her books, but really it can be any translated collection of short stories or anthologies. I like this for a couple of reasons. One, you've got multiple stories within a single copy, so that way you can just kind of skim around, choose whichever ones that are most interesting to you. And then secondly, the stories themselves are shorter than the entire book as a whole. So if it feels daunting to tackle a 250, 300 plus page book, because they're broken up into shorter stories, you'll feel less intimidated because you'll have the stories that are broken out into smaller pieces. That way, when you finish a story, you get a sense of accomplishment and you'll be encouraged courage to go on. Okay, so leveling up. The fourth type of book that I recommend reading is a book that you have never read, but it is by an author or a genre that you're a fan of. So for example, I have Sophie Kinsella's, I guess it's kind of new, but it's My Perfect Life, and it's obviously been translated into Spanish. I think it's a couple of years old, like I said, but I picked this up in a bookshop when I was in Mexico, and it's because I had heard about it already, but I haven't actually read it. So I am familiar with Sophie Kinsella's work, and I like the YA romance contemporary genre. So I wanted to get something in a genre that I was interested in, but that I hadn't read, so that it challenges me. So you can obviously see that it's much thicker, and unlike the anthologies, obviously this is just one story, but when you're ready to tackle something a little bit more advanced, I would suggest doing something in a genre that you like. That way you are more compelled to finish through, because let's be honest, when you are reading in a different language or you're trying to learn, coming across a bunch of words or long pages, it can feel a little discouraging. So you want to make sure that it's a book that you're interested in, or rather a book that you would pick up in your native language anyway. That way, at the very least, you're compelled to finish or trudge through, because it's a story that you're already interested in. Okay, last but not least, my fifth type of book is actually not a physical book, but audiobooks. I think it's equally as important to improve your listening skills as it is your reading comprehension, which is why I suggest audiobooks. You can see an example here that I've downloaded. Oops. You can see an example here that I've downloaded, Will Grayson, which is again translated into Spanish. I got this one from my local library. If you have the Libby or the Overdrive app, you can use that as an excellent resource to download books that you are interested in, or at least browse in your target language to see what they have available. I really like this idea because with the audiobooks, you can set your speed. So depending on your level of listening comprehension, you can keep it at a 1 speed or regular speed. You can bump it up, you can lower it. That way you can make sure that you are challenging yourself while at the same time setting a speed that makes sure that you're still into the story and that you're understanding. But of course, I do want to mention, just again, going back to my previous example, I think it's important that if you are going to listen to an audiobook, to make sure that it is a book that you're interested in, or an author or genre that you're interested in, because again, you don't want to feel like it's work. Obviously, there's going to be challenging times and you're not going to understand anything, but you don't want to feel like it's homework, like you're stuck in a classroom and you're being forced to listen to something because you're going to be quizzed about it later. You want to make sure that you're prompted to keep listening because you're intrigued by it, right? Okay, so those are my 5 type of books. I hope that you guys find those useful. Let me know in the comments if you know a second language or you're learning a second language, and if you listen or read books in your second language. Like I said, I know Spanish, but I'll be honest, I don't read it as much as I should, and so I want to make sure that I don't lose practice, and I have vowed to make sure that I've got a Spanish book in my TBR before the end of the year, and I will most definitely be adding more for next year for my 2020 goals. So let me know if you want to join me in that. Maybe we can kind of hold each other accountable. All right, guys, that will do it for today, and until next time, bye!